Hey, it's Kylie Davis from the PropTech podcast here with a special note about this episode of Planet Ark Power. This episode is one that I recorded back in late February before the world went completely haywire, and I was so excited about it. I thought the technology at Planet Ark Power was absolutely brilliant, and I genuinely love the good news story that it offered landlords, tenants, and building owners of large commercial and industrial properties, and I couldn't wait to bring it to my audience. After the interview, I was completely buzzed. But during the interview, Richard mentioned the Ikea Project, and we found out after the interview had been completed that it was actually all under embargo with the South Australian government, and so we had to put the podcast on hold until the project launched. But now, happily, construction has commenced, and the Ikea Adelaide retail outlet will become a microgrid solar farm. This means it will operate on 100% renewable energy, while also trading energy back into the grid. So for IKEA, their energy costs are going to be reduced by over 30% with no capital outlay. Wow. And in this podcast, we talk about the Planet Ark Power technology that has made this opportunity possible for property owners to actually offer their tenants the same benefit with a zero capital commercial structure. So I really hope you enjoy this latest episode of the PropTech podcast, even though it's been on hold for a while. Welcome to the PropTech podcast. It's Kylie Davis here, and I'm delighted to be your host as we explore the brave new world where technology and real estate collide. I passionately believe that we need to create and grow a sense of community between the innovators and real estate agents, and sharing our stories is a great way to do that. The aim of each episode is to introduce listeners to a proptech innovator who is pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and to explore the issues and challenges raised by their tech and how they can create amazing property experiences. Now, this is one of the most exciting interviews I've done for a long time in my career. My guest in this episode is Richard Romanowski, CEO of Planet Ark Power, a proptech startup that in all seriousness could save the planet and make Australia alone carbon neutral by 2035. And they can do that just by enabling our existing industrial and commercial properties to feature solar panels on their rooftops. Now, why don't commercial and industrial buildings do that already? Well, there's a deeply technical answer to that involving electricity waves that Richard explains to us in this episode, and Planet Ark Power solves that through some clever use of AI and a well thought through business proposal that is utterly compelling to landlords. So as an agent, you really want to make sure that you get your brain around this, because the value this will add to properties is enormous, not to mention that it could spell the end to coal-fired power. So Richard Romanowski, I'm so excited. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So, look, I know a little bit about what you guys do, but for our audience, what's your elevator pitch? What does Planet Ark Power do?
Ooh, you got me on the spot right away.
Yeah.
Basically, we have a technology that lets you fill every single rooftop with solar, which is something you can't do now. That lets us produce almost all the energy we need. We can produce by filling our roofs with solar and then adding batteries. So we can speed up the decarbonization of the world with our technology.
Wow. And that's from using the existing roof space that we already have.
Absolutely. So That's one of the big problems we have. And people forget how complex the electricity industry is. Yeah. And everybody thinks, it's easy. Just stick solar on the roof and we can use the sun.
Yeah. So look, let's wind back a little bit. How let's talk about power supply in Australia, because I think you guys are a fantastic example of how PropTech is going to save the planet. But just so that we can help people get their brains around the idea, how big is the power supply market in Australia? What does it look and behave like?
Well, it's huge. If you think of the electricity grid from the poles and wires that send electricity from the coal power station into the city, it's the largest man-made machine in the world. It's huge. Wow. Biggest thing we've ever built. Wow. And so then, so in terms of, it's billions of dollars and billions of dollars in terms of size, in terms of the assets that are under ownership, and the amount of energy. But the key, and this is part of where we're coming from, is the electricity has always been a one-way flow of energy. So it's like a big water pipe going one way down to your house and down to your business.
Yep.
And that's the problem.
Right. So why is that a problem? How does that relate to the problem of solar power on your roof?
So solar power is like, if you think of this huge, massive water pipe going one way, which is all this electricity, and you're sort of shooting like a little sprinkler of energy from your little solar, from your solar on your roof, on
panels,
your residential roof, right? It's like a little tiny sprinkler, and the big water pipe can handle it. But when the sprinkler gets too big, it starts to create problems for the grid, imbalances, blackouts, brownouts, voltage problems that will, for example, blow up your microwave, or if you're a commercial business, can impact on your very expensive equipment. So that's what we're at now here in Australia.
Right. So I just want to make sure I understand it properly. So I've got a source of electricity, like a power plant, regardless of at the moment of that is creating the energy, and that's pushing all the power out down the pipe through the poles and wires, but to our properties. And then when I put a solar panel on my house roof, it's kind of trying to push a bit of power either into that network or back into the pipe.
Yeah, they call it backwards. You're basically sending energy backwards, right?
Right. Okay.
It's never designed to do that. So you can handle a little bit of backwards energy, but not very much. And so that's what, so when you want to fill all the roof space with electricity, that becomes a huge amount of energy going backwards.
Yeah,
and that's not possible without breaking the system.
Right. Okay.
But they call that an electricity engineering unfixable problem. For 100 years they've never figured out how to fix it, and we figured out how to fix it.
That's fantastic. So tell us, how do you fix it? The $1 million question.
We've built an Internet of Things digital device that goes behind the meter in your house or in your building.
Yep.
It, with a very, very sophisticated software, manages and watches what's happening on the grid and in that building, and harmonizes the electricity so it can actually flow both ways. So the word I've used is harmonized. And it uses artificial intelligence, very sophisticated artificial intelligence, to keep everything in check in real time.
Right. So it's monitoring the flow and pushing the electricity from your battery source on your roof into the grid when the flow is most able to take it, or how does that?
So because electricity is a wave, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So so when you're sending, one big wave's coming from the one way, and then you're sending a wave backwards, it creates sort of a disjointed, complex circumstance. Yep. So we harmonize that so the wave can go both ways. So we can actually get 100% energy flowing both ways from the coal power station, and I can send 100% energy backwards.
Wow.
Technology.
Wow. So effectively your business turns every building in Australia into a solar battery pack.
Absolutely. So the way we call it, we've actually moved the solar farm. We can move the solar farm from way out in Whoop Whoop all the way into our city. So we focus on commercial buildings because residential is doing well. But you fly into Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne, you look down, you've got acres and acres of empty roof space, right?
Yeah.
And the reason people aren't filling them up is because there's this, the grid can't handle it, right? It's actually, technically it's called a voltage problem. It's technically reverse power flow is what they call it, the engineers. But at the end of the day, we fix it. So now we can fill that big, huge warehouse with roofs, with solar. Yeah. Some of the energy on that roof is used, like your house, by that business. But the rest of the energy, 60%, is able to then get sent into the grid. Mm-hmm. Part two is we can then add a huge, massive battery that not only looks after the building, but then helps support the grid. So we provide all that grid benefits and stability with the battery, as well as being able to send energy backwards.
Wow, I'm so excited by this. So if I'm a landlord of a commercial or an industrial building, what you're telling me is at the moment I might have some additional revenue streams from my building if I could maybe sell the some advertising space on the front of it, or or some airspace on the front of it. But now actually I'm able to monetize my rooftop to both offset my electricity use and costs, or sell that back to my my tenants, or I can start to get another revenue stream coming from the power that I can sell back to the grid. Is that right?
Exactly correct. So I'll add to that and say, so I'm a landlord. Now I can sell. So we can actually bring investors in. So it can be the landlord, whether the landlord wants to do it himself or herself.
Yep.
Or now you have the big banks, the big pension funds are willing to invest in this. Remember, it's sometimes a $5 or $10 million investment of solar and batteries.
Right. Okay.
They get rent for their roof space, right? If they want to own it themselves, they can, but they get rent for the roof space. They can sell urban rooftop solar farm sells energy, cheap, clean energy to the tenant. So they say, the property guys say, they get a green, sticky tenant, because I'm not going to leave. I've got this cheaper energy here, so I'm happy, so I'm going to stay. The property price goes up because someone's basically put $5 or $10 million worth of solar and batteries in your building without you having to pay for it.
Yep.
And then the owner of the solar power plant and battery, they get a return on investment. So they're actually, it's like a mini business, quite a big mini business.
Right.
So it's a complete circle. We've solved the investor's problem, the landlord's problem, the tenant's problem, and then the grid's problem. So
what you're saying is that as a landlord, I don't need to worry, anything to do with electricity and infrastructure is often quite an expensive capex or, capitalization costs that you've got to spend. What you're saying is that as a landlord, I don't actually need to outlay a huge amount to put this on, because there's a whole business package that sits behind it that makes this available to me. Correct. So in fact, they don't have to outlay anything, not a penny. If they want to invest and own this power plant, and it'll earn a real good return on investment for, say, 20 years. Yep. But we have the super funds, the pension funds are lining up to invest money to basically put power plants on the landlord's rooftops and run it as a business. But the landlord gets a green sticky tenant, and they get rent for the rooftop. Fantastic. So how could this revolutionize power generation in Australia? Like, how much could how many acres of rooftop or hectares of rooftop is there out there, and how much power could that generate if we went down that path? We can do all of our energy plus 20% if we filled all the rooftops with. Wow. And that's exciting. That is so exciting. Who said tech was boring? It's huge. And that's a study done by the Australian PV Institute, and by the University of Sydney and UTS. So it's actually an independent study that actually said we can generate 120% of our total energy needs if we filled every roof. So no more coal-fired power plants required whatsoever. No more coal power plants, exactly. But the key is you can't do that if there's this voltage backwards energy problem. And because we fix it, now you can actually do it. And then we can even add, in a commercial building, we can add solar car parks. We can add small ground mount. We can probably get in Australia, we probably get to 150 to 200% of our energy generated from
from within our suburbs.
Right, because it's not like we don't have much sun, so it's not.
We got tons.
I've got more than enough sun.
But it's the same. I'll just jump worldly. So around the world. So effectively in the Sun Belt, we think this is the same for the whole world around the Sun Belt. So roughly 80% of the population live in that Sun Belt, and the same thing will apply, that most cities can generate 70, 80, 90, 100% of their energy from rooftop solar.
Wow, okay, that's so fantastic.
Let's just pause there for a moment and hear a quick word from our sponsors.
If your business is growing quickly, you need to scale your team. Beepo is an Australian outsourcing company that specialises in helping real estate and technology businesses to grow. Outsourcing is not just about bringing on staff with a lower cost base. Beepo recruits and manages staff based in the Philippines who will become full-time members of your team. They will help you identify the key skill sets, the employment history and other attributes that you need from your employees and match your requirements with the right staff. Beepo will also help you to break down your structure, job descriptions, task management, and to understand how having a virtual team fits into your organisation. Done properly, outsourcing can help you understand the internal processes of your business, drive your efficiency, and provide you with a roadmap for growth. So talk to Beepo and scale your business for success. So what's the role that a real estate agent here in Australia could play in this conversation and in getting this technology out? And what's in it for them?
I've never actually had, the way you've asked the question is a great one. So for the real estate agent, now in the mix of things is improving the value of the building depends on whether they have this rooftop solar and battery system in place, because it will obviously add capital value to the building, but more importantly, add leasee value, because you're going to get a longer tenant, less vacancies.
We get more rent too, hopefully.
Rent, in fact, you can even charge more rent. So there's a whole range of things that can be done.
Yeah.
So it really adds a real additional string to the bow of a commercial real estate agent in terms of recommending and facilitating this to happen.
Yeah. So to help us understand that, Richard, talk us through some of the case studies, or a couple of case studies that I know you guys have had.
Okay. So,
which help us put some real dollar value behind where you went from.
Toyota dealership in Ipswich, which is Llewellyn Motors. So we started that as our first case study, where we had 320 kilowatts of solar, which is a big system. That's 600-700 houses worth of solar on the roof.
Wow.
And 20% of it was wasted because you can't send energy backwards into the grid when you're that big. They had to, basically the 20% of the energy was wasted, not being able to be used by the building or not being able to send into the grid.
Can you give me an idea of how big that building was in terms of square meters, or so that we can kind of visualize it?
So it's a full city block, 300 kilowatts. We would then install our technology. That 20% of energy that was wasted now becomes an income stream. So There's another $25,000 a year in income, or income to the owner to reduce their energy bill.
Wow.
But then step two is, now that we've actually allowed the energy to go backwards into the grid, we can add another couple of hundred kilowatts of solar on the roof. So we could add more, but that's the space left. They had no more roof space. We fill the rest of the roof space with solar. It saves the dealership a lot more on their energy bill.
Yep.
And then we add a battery. We're adding a big, huge battery, and even further reducing their energy bill. Remember, energy bill has demand charges and consumption charges. Is that something you guys are familiar with? So the battery helps reduce demand charges. So it's a huge benefit. That case study is our flagship. It's our first site here in Brisbane.
Yep.
Our second site. So by the time this goes live, our technology, which we've branded Alexis, we actually call our little digital device and software Alexis.
Right.
And
not Alexa, Alexis. Yep.
And so it stands for Electricity Export System. So that's why it's so Alexis. It will be announcing the Ikea site in Adelaide, be our big flagship site. So Ikea has come to the party with being our first really, really big site. It'll be 1.2 megawatts. So it's about
wow. Most at Adelaide.
Yeah, four or five football fields of rooftop solar.
Wow.
And then about two 40-foot containers of batteries, so 3 megawatt hours of batteries. It's about a $7 million project. And the IKEA will be buying the clean energy. It'll be owned by one of the super funds in Australia. So they're actually putting the money up because all they care about is getting their return on investment, right? So landlords getting a rooftop rental, and the grid is getting the benefits of the battery. So that project will be announced, I hope, by the time this goes live.
Yep. Cool, very cool. And you had another case study that Steve was talking about at the API conference about a local high school up in Brisbane or the Gold Coast.
Yes, there's one high school. We're still trying to get that approved to install, but the feasibility is that it can handle today roughly about 250 kilowatts of solar if you were to install solar now, but that would only fill about 1/10 of the roof. And remember, if you can't send energy backwards, then it's not worth putting more solar on. With our technology, we can put about 1.5 megawatts of solar on the roof and a battery. That takes the energy bill from roughly a $20,000 a month energy bill, and we can turn it into probably a $30,000 a month income stream.
Wow. So going from, that's 50K turnaround really, isn't it? So, and as a school, if you had sort of 30K coming into the coffers rather than 20K going out every month, that would pretty much change how you educate all those kids.
Exactly. So again, it's just a bit of patience. It takes, for something new, it takes a long time for people to say, yes, let's give it a go. But that's something we hope to have up and running in probably about 6 to 9 months.
Wow, fantastic.
So again, it's a radical shift in terms of how we think. Energy can be actually an income stream now instead of a cost. Wow.
So Richard, tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into this? How long has Planet Ark Power been going for?
Planet Ark Power, so the whole group of companies has been going for 7 years. It's taken us 7 years of development to get this far. We've invested roughly $20 million of our own money to build this technology. So it's not been cheap. It's been very challenging. We have 50 staff and 30 electrical engineers on staff. So it's a big part of it. What really started things last April, we got a phone call from Berlin.
Yeah.
So the World Energy Council, we think that, well, they're all over the world, but they're mainly European based. They phoned us up and said, hey, we heard a little bit about what you're doing. They sent us 2 plane tickets and said, come to Berlin. We want to see you. So we jumped on a plane, and basically was part of the World Energy Council Startup Energy Transition Awards. And so we had put an application in with about 500-600 other startups around the world. They flew us to Berlin. We got on stage and we won. So,
wow! Congratulations! Fantastic.
So it's like it really helped us understand. We always thought we had something fancy here, a good result, but until we actually got up there and presented it, and we had 20 of the best energy venture capitalists in the world put us through like a Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And it was like an hour of drilling me with Q&As, and then I thought I made a mistake and boobed it all up, but we won.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that was, and they've really encouraged us. So the World Energy Council has really encouraged us to think bigger. We were planning to be, the usual sort of quiet Australians, and
we'll just fix Brisbane. No.
And they said, no, we want you to do this big.
I can't tell you how excited I am that there are Queenslanders out there not getting, like, looking for alternatives to coal. It's great. So if we when we go down this path, Richard, what kind of effect is it going to have on CO2 and emission levels? Even just here in Australia, what could we do if we changed our rooftops into solar panels, or when we change our rooftops into solar panels?
I would love to challenge the property industry. You guys can change the world. We can by filling the rooftops. So, for example, I mentioned the Ikea project. If we get 1,000 Ikea sites, we can shut down one coal power station.
Wow. Yep.
And that's doable, because there's you probably know better than I how many big, large commercial buildings are there? 5 million in Australia, as a guess.
Do you know what? I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm going to look it up, and I'll put it in the show notes.
All we need, and then so there's 21 power stations.
Yes.
All we need is 21,000 large commercial buildings.
Right. Yep.
And the landlord doesn't have to invest a penny.
Yep.
We have the pension funds, the super funds will come in, build a solar, like an urban solar farm on their roof.
Yep.
Stick a battery in, clean energy for the tenant, clean, cheap energy for the tenant. They get rent, and we can get rid of all the power stations in Australia. It'll probably take us about 10 or 15 years, but we can completely be a green economy.
Wow. And so if we did all of that, there's a lot of talk especially post, the bushfires here in, especially they happened everywhere, didn't they? Queensland, New South Wales, and also down in Victoria and South Australia. But so there's a whole new focus on climate and carbon emissions and all of this worry. And we're being told by government that we can't commit to zero emissions. That's just silly, because it's completely not doable, and even by 2050. What are you saying? You're saying we could do that by 2035, probably.
Every coal power station.
Wow, that's so exciting. That's amazing. Look, it almost sounds too good to be true. What are the downsides? There must be a downside. What are they?
Part of our whole business model is we don't have to ask permission from the federal government or the states. We can just do it.
Oh, I love that even more.
Structure the government is too slow, really. I mean, that's basically what Greta's been saying over and over again is, stop talking, just do it. And you have the leading companies around the world are just doing it. So Google, for example, they're all committing to net zero. They're all committing to basically getting on with it and ignoring the politicians. So let's just do this. Let's just do it.
Yeah. Okay. So
I don't mean to, but it's not this. This is the commercial world. It's just too commercial in terms of I can save money. I can make it all work.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's extraordinarily empowering. So what do we need to do to make it roll out more? We need real estate agents effectively to be looking at the properties that are in their portfolio in terms of if they're commercial or industrial agents with a big rent roll of properties that they're looking after on behalf of their owners, then they should be looking at them and having conversations with their landlords about, let's look at how we do this. Let's look at how we create another revenue stream for you.
Yes.
Yep. And then I guess we also need some additional skills in real estate in that way to help them understand how to create the business case for it and how to then sell that. Or are you guys helping out with that?
We do all that. We do all that problem away from them, because it is that's part of why we have 50 staff. It's not easy, and they're electrical engineers, because you get into the magic of electricity.
Okay.
So, so that's part of coming back to the real estate agents and the landlords with the answers instead of them having to do any of the work, other than being willing to look and think about it.
Yeah, and so Richard, and it's safe to have that battery pack on my property. There's no emissions or things like that I need to worry about. Like, you know, everyone's anxious about mobile phone towers when they all started going in.
Yes, so we make sure that the batteries are located outside; they're not put into the building. Mm-hmm. So again, there's lots of concerns now for fire risk for batteries. So we're very conscious of that. Mm-hmm. Batteries are still too young of a technology to put inside your building. We put them outside the building, so we'll find a place that's suitable to the landlords and tenants agreement. They go into sort of fire retarding safe enclosures. Yep. with smoke detectors and fire detectors and all that sort of stuff is all built into the whole safety process. Yep. So again, we're engineers, we're conservative.
Yeah, well, that's true. I've worked with engineers before in a past life when I was at the Australian newspaper.
So is that a good enough answer to say, you know, it is?
No, I think that's great. Yeah.
The key is making sure that it's safe. So we that's built into what we're doing.
Yeah, fantastic.
Let's just pause there for a moment and hear a quick word from our sponsors.
As a real estate agent, you know you need to be doing more content marketing. But creating posts for social media, creating videos and reports is hard work, lots of hard work, and it takes time. So that's why you need HomePrezo. If you're a typical agent posting 1 or 2 social media posts a week, HomePrezo can save you between 75 to 100 hours a year. How many more properties could you sell if you had that time back? HomePrezo can help you create engaging, informative videos about how the property market in your local suburb is performing. Plus, it makes creating suburb reports, rental videos for landlords, and social media infographics an absolute piece of cake. If you can type in a suburb or type an address, you can create a Prezo using HomePrezo in just a few minutes. Listeners to the PropTech podcast receive a 14-day free trial. Now that's twice as long as the normal free trial. So go to homeprezo.com.au and click the sign up button and use the code PropTech to get your extended free trial. Or click the link in our show notes. So what's your company structure? So you said that you've invested 20 million. That's an awful lot of money to invest. How are you guys structured?
So we're a publicly unlisted company. Mm-hmm. The parent company is called Alexis Holdings, mm-hmm. and we're actually undertaking now a Series A capital raise.
Right.
So we're raising $20 million more dollars to mm-hmm. allow us to speed up commercialization. So again, remember when we won in Berlin, the World Energy Council said,
"Think bigger." Yeah.
Bigger, do this faster. So that's why we've set a $20 million raise, which lets us speed up in Australia. But we've also, with the World Energy Council, they've helped us create an office and connections in London, in Nice, France, in Singapore, and California. So we have projects starting, demonstration projects of our technology all over the world. Again, it wasn't what we thought. Remember, we thought we were going to just do Queensland first. Yeah. Right? But they said, look, we have to do this. You know, it's too good a thing to do to go slow and speed it up. And that's what the $20 million is for, is to speed up commercialization and begin our international footprint.
Fantastic. That's so exciting. So the future seems so extraordinarily bright. What do you see the next 5 years being like, both for you and in this space?
Oh, I get nervously scared, excited when you ask the question.
Yeah, excitedly terrified.
It is. And so what we're doing, so to be able to scale globally, we will license our technology to everybody in the industry. So we're like the Intel inside of the computer industry, you know, that little chip goes inside of everything. Yep. So our little technology goes into every rooftop to then let them export. So that's sort of the concept of putting Alexis into every single building. But we don't want to be the installer down the track. We're basically licensing every solar company. We're licensing all the pension funds or super funds around the world to use our technology. So this would roll out or speed up or scale globally, as they call it. And basically, we're trying to decarbonize. So we think we're a very significant part of decarbonizing the world and helping electrification of everything. So one of the key things is, if you think of the future, when we have the building owners are also going to have electric vehicles, so everybody's going to show up, and then they're going to be pulling more energy out of the electricity grid. We help that, we facilitate that to happen, and in a green way.
Wow. And I guess if every building's around the countries, or even if a much greater proportion of buildings around the country, which is I guess what will happen first, have solar grids on their rooftops, then the need to go out and build special battery chargers for electric cars starts to diminish, because suddenly you've already got it there and it just needs to be plugged in, or the extra step needs to be gone, right?
It's all there. So
it doesn't become an infrastructure project, because you guys have kind of got that nailed.
With the Ikea project, they're moving to all their delivery vehicles will be electric.
Yep.
They'll have on-site electric charging, so they'll charge off their own rooftop solar. They'll need more rooftop solar. So what we're going to be doing is adding probably a couple of megawatts of solar car park to that site, plus EV charging systems. They'll be able to run their whole delivery fleet off their own energy on that site.
Wow, that's so exciting.
I'm going to interrupt and go back for a second. And the other thing is, you mentioned before, and I'll go back to it, is this the bushfires.
Yeah.
So one of the things that what people are saying is we need resiliency. So that means when the bushfire comes, or when remember when the bushfires happen way out in the country, that shuts down or destroys the transmission lines between us and the coal power station, or even the solar farm.
Yep.
The commercial building with rooftop solar and batteries is its own little microgrid. It will when the power goes off, it'll keep running.
Right.
So
fantastic.
A lot of times, the guys with free refrigeration have diesel backups. So the battery actually helps as a backup. So it's a big part of creating resiliency in the community, where you have many buildings that can actually keep operating
and keep feeding the
school becomes our emergency location where the lights, solar and batteries keeps the lights on. That's
fantastic. 'Cause, we have a property down the south coast of New South Wales, and we were bushfire affected, and the house is fine, luckily. But every time we got evacuated, the biggest issue for us is that if we lost power, we had no water to our pump. So there was no way to defend the property at all, because you had no power. So is there residential impact for Alexis?
Yes, there is absolutely a residential version. So we've started with commercial, and then we will be developing a residential version in 2021, so that your farm, your property can have solar and batteries, and basically go off grid and be a lot safer and cheaper.
Fantastic. I can't wait, Richard. This is so exciting. This is like the best news I've heard all summer after a very dark and depressing summer around with conversations around carbon and what you can or can't do. Now, to me, the excitement of it too from the real estate industry is that new ideas always take time to take seed. And so the agents that really get their brains around this and start to look at the opportunities in their portfolios and start to work with you guys and work with their landlords and tenants to introduce it, are going to be able to, I can see, make quite an extraordinary amount of money just from being able to articulate the value proposition of this software and of your AI to the value of their property. So it's extraordinarily exciting.
Thank you. And I'm nervous about the 500 phone calls that we're going to get out of it.
I think we might need to. So Maddie sent me a whole pile of fabulous information. I'm going to put that into the show notes. And so, Richard, just to go back a little bit too, can you just give me a little bit of background about you? You're obviously an engineer. Tell us about your history.
Surprisingly, no, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually the money guy. So the business. So I've been in business for many years, and then about 15 years ago, I started investing in clean energy startups. So just did angel investing.
Yep.
And then ended up by circumstance meeting my co-founder, who is the engineer.
Right.
So Bevan Holcomb is the PhD in electrical engineering, and he was at Energix for quite a while, and really running their smart grid programs, and understood the problem that the world was going to have. So between him and I, we invested our money and our time for the last 7 years to build this business up.
Fantastic. Richard, it has been absolutely a pleasure to talk to you. I am so excited about your technology. I'm super excited about the fact that we don't need to wait for government, and that that the real estate industry can get behind helping you guys grow this and growing the value of the assets that we're in charge of. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
So are you as blown away as I am right now? How freaking clever is that as a technology, and the problem that it solves? This summer in Australia, we experienced firsthand the reality of climate change. And I don't know about you, but I have been thoroughly depressed about the conversation that has followed. Such undeniable evidence that the planet is getting hotter and more dangerous. The total lack of leadership from our politicians, who still to this very day insist that we need to open more coal plants, is not just blockheaded, it's thoroughly depressing. Because in a country like Australia with so much sun that has been in drought for so long, how can we not make solar viable? I love Planet Ark Power's technology because it solves all those obstacles to going solar. I love that it doesn't require governments to spend on expensive infrastructure, and that it uses the existing poles and wires and electricity grid. And I love that it doesn't require any changes in legislation. We can just do it. But most of all, I love the fact that if we as a real estate industry get behind this and encourage our landlords to increase the value of their property assets by making electricity cheaper for their tenants, and add a valuable revenue stream to their investments by selling power back to the grid, well, holy moly, we could lead the revolution and make Australia carbon neutral, not by 2050, which our politicians tell us is far too early to commit to, but by 2035. Just by doing what we're doing now, selling and renting real estate and helping our landlords get better returns. Wouldn't that be amazing? So look, we've included all the information on how to find out more about Planet Ark Power in the show notes, including how to contact Richard and his team. So now, if you have enjoyed this episode of the PropTech podcast as much as I have, please tell your friends. Drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you via email, LinkedIn, or on our Facebook page. And you can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple iTunes, and Google Podcasts. I'd like to thank my audio support, Charlie Hollins, and the very fabulous Jill Escudero, and our sponsors Beepo, making outsourcing easy, and Home Prezzo, turning your data into amazing marketing content. So thanks everyone. Until next week, keep on prop teching, because remember, prop tech will save the planet. See ya.